Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of Digital Fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and today we have the leaked commanders for the Commander pre-constructed decks that are coming for the Commander set for Modern Horizons 3. Also, there was a huge mega leak of new Modern Horizons 3 cards. It seems like the leaks just don't stop coming. So in this video, we're going to go over the 4 leaked commanders, and then I do have another video coming. In fact, I think it's going to be a 2-parter where we cover the rest of the mega leak. It's so big we have to cover it in 2 videos, but I wanted to get this one out here first. Talk about these commanders that are the commanders for the Commander Precons, and get this out of the way and just let you guys know that those videos, those full-length videos covering the majority of the mega leak, those are coming. It's going to be a 2-parter, so look forward to those. If you haven't already, please like this video. It helps me a ton. It helps this video get out to so many more people, and it's you guys that have been liking all the videos that have been helping me to grow so fast. It's because of you. So if you've been doing that, thank you so much. If you haven't yet, please hit it. Just takes a second. And if you're new, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. We've got tons of spoiler content on the way. I try to jump on it and get it out as quick as I can to you guys to break the news. And lots of really crazy deck techs still to go over for Thunder Junction. So lots of content coming. But with that said, let's move right into our first spoiler. This is for the Graveyard Overdrive Commander deck. And it cites here that you will fill your graveyard and avenge the dead. It is in the colors of Jund. And we finally have our commander for this. Disa the Restless. Now, I want to note really quick that these images of these commanders were proxies made by the Commander's Quarters. If you haven't checked out that channel, really cool channel that covers everything Commander in Magic the Gathering, and they're always on top of spoilers as well, but they specifically focus on Commander, and they were kind enough to like generate these proxy images of these cards because the images we have access to are very blurry and not fit for sharing really, but I can confirm that all of the cards we're going to show you today are word for word correct with the actual leaked cards. It's just those cards look like crap, so we're not going to show them. We're going to show the Commander's Quarters versions. So shout out to Commander's Quarters for making these, and if you haven't checked out their channel, I'm going to link them in the description, so make sure and check them out. Awesome channel for Commander content. But this is Disa the Restless. She's 5 mana in the colors of Jund for a 5/6 legendary human scout. Whenever a Lurgoyf is put into your graveyard from anywhere but the battlefield, you put it into the battlefield. And whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. So, what this will basically do is be a Lurgoyf tribal commander. Even though it's not a Lurgoyf itself, it's a human scout. It's essentially going to be a Lurgoyf deck, right? So anytime a Lurgoyf goes to the graveyard from anywhere but the battlefield, so if you mill it, if you self-mill it, if you discard it from your hand, if your opponent forces you to discard it from your hand, there's a lot of different ways to trigger this, and you just get it onto the battlefield for free. So if you're in the type of deck that can just discard stuff out of your hand to draw more cards or to get other beneficial effects, you just discard all your Lurgoyfs and just put them onto the battlefield for free. That seems kind of disgusting. And then the other ability, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you create a Tarmogoyf token, is also kind of nuts. Now, it's worth noting it triggers off 1 or more creatures, which means you'll only get 1 Tarmogoyf token per combat, but you can get around this with First Strike or Double Strike, because if you do First Strike damage to a player, you'll get a Tarmogoyf token, and then when you deal normal damage to a player, you'll also get a Tarmogoyf token, and that's kind of a pretty cool interaction, I think, that can be exploited. And then obviously if you can get multiple combat steps, you can really go off the hinges with something like that, but that's a lot of hoops to jump through, so I think that's an idea for another day. But even just First Strike, Double Strike, helping to create twice as many Tarmogoyf tokens, and really I think the huge draw here is just being able to discard and self-mill all of your Lurgoyfs and just put them onto the battlefield. That seems pretty disgusting. I think it's pretty cool, but we're going to move on. The next one is Creative Energy. This deck is in the colors of Jeskai, so white, red, and blue. And it notes that you'll use energy counters and have powerful payoffs. And the leaked commander that we have here now is Satya, Aetherflux Engineer. This is a 3/5 legendary human artificer with menace and haste for 5 mana in the colors of Jeskai. And when Satya, Aetherflux Engineer attacks, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of up to one other target attacking creature you control. You get 2 energy, and at the beginning of the next end step, you sacrifice that token unless you pay an amount of energy equal to its mana value. Wow, so you can make a copy of anything, and just like a lot of things that make copies, you have to sack it at end of turn, but if it's cheap enough, you can actually just pay energy to keep it, and if you have other ways in the deck to generate energy, then you can make copies of really big attacking creatures and still get to keep them by just paying more energy. It's also worth noting that you can just have this on the battlefield, and you can swing and make a tapped token and then not try to keep it, let it die, but keep the energy. And in this way, every turn you can kind of keep 2 energy and build up, go from 2 to 4 to 6, and then eventually keep something that's kind of bigger, which is pretty cool. And you can utilize that to a greater extent if you have things that are sacrificing creatures to get value, because if the thing's going to die anyway, you can sack it. The fact that you have menace and haste means you can activate it the turn it comes down, and it's hard for your opponent to block this. If they only have 1 blocker, you can assure that you get through and don't have to trade with the opponent and still get to trigger the ability. So there's a lot of cool ways to utilize this. It seems really awesome. Also, if you're making copies of like Ornithopter or really cheap things that don't really have a mana value, you get to keep all of your energy and still keep the copy. That could be useful in some kind of weird like Ornithopter tribal deck. I know some of those are circulating around, so there's a lot of really cool things I think you could do with Satya here. Seems really interesting. But we're gonna move on to the 3rd deck, which is kind of my favorite, I think. This is Tricky Terrain. This is in the colors of Simic, so blue and green, and it notes that you will ramp lands and grow value. And the leaked commander we have for this one is Omo, Queen of Vesuva. Now, most of you probably don't know this, some of you old-timers might, but my favorite Magic card, or at least it used to be my favorite Magic card, I'd have to really think hard about it today, but for the longest time, my favorite Magic card was always Vesuvan Doppelganger. Just love the elegance of that card and how it functioned and the artwork and everything about it. So getting like the legendary version, basically, of Vesuvan Doppelganger is kind of cool, even though the abilities are kind of different. So this is Omo, Queen of Vesuva. She's a 1/5 legendary shapeshifter noble. She costs 3 mana in the colors of Simic, and that 1 colored mana is a hybrid mana of green-blue, so you can pay just blue or just green to play her, which is kind of interesting. But if you have her as your command, your deck is Simic. Whenever Omo, Queen of Vesuva, enters the battlefield or attacks, you put an everything counter on up to 1 target creature and up to 1 target land. Creatures you control with everything counters on them are every creature type, and lands you control with everything counters on them are every land type. This seems kind of crazy because the fact that it triggers on ETB actually makes it really hard for your opponent to deal with this, because she's cheap enough as a commander that if your opponent kills her, you just get to replay her relatively quickly and then get that enters the battlefield trigger again. But if your opponent doesn't deal with it, you get the trigger again on attacks. So they're kind of screwed if they do, screwed if they don't. But her ability is really interesting. So it's creatures you control and lands you control with everything counters on them are every type. So unfortunately, you can't like put counters on your opponent's stuff, like turn your opponent's land into an island every basic, basically, so that you could have things with Island Walk get through. That would be a really cool interaction, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. This is only going to affect your creatures, but still, being able to basically play a deck that is just filled to the brim with tribal payoffs, every different tribal payoff you can think of, and then you just slam this and you're able to turn all of your creatures, or at least one at a time, you're able to turn your creatures into every creature type so that they get the cumulative buff of all the tribal payoffs from whatever cards you've played so far. Seems like it could be kind of cool. And the land thing too could fit pretty well with, we've seen some cards already spoiled from this set that care about land types, that give like the Urza land type. It's worth noting it doesn't just give them every basic land type, right? So they're gonna count as towers and mines and stuff for Urzatron and locusts and all that sort of stuff. So you could do some pretty interesting things, I think, in the right land-centric deck, but you can also do some really gross things if you're running lots of different tribal payoffs and trying to go changelings. Being able to make all of your cards that give tribal payoffs into changeling to also receive all of the tribal payoffs, I think is what puts this over the top, because you could always kind of play a changeling deck and then play a bunch of different tribal payoffs that stack up on those changelings specifically. But then all of those creatures that are lords, that are giving buffs to certain tribes, they're not really getting any benefits from anything themselves. Well, now all of them can become changelings basically as well. They can all become creatures of every type, get all of the buffs from each other, and you can really double down on like crazy changeling shenanigans. It just seems really, really fun, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface of how deep a mechanic like this could go and all the different kinds of decks you could build around it. It seems really, really fun, and I'm pretty excited about it. I might actually buy this one, and it's been a long time since I bought any kind of pre-constructed product from Wizards of the Coast. So this might actually get me to pull the trigger just because of its relation to Vesuvian Doppelganger and just because of how interesting it seems. But we're going to move on to the last one here. This deck is called Eldrazi Incursion, and it is every color, including colorless, because it's Eldrazi. But is it really every color? Or is it just, Anyways, it notes that you will start small and Eldrazi Smash. And the leaked commander here is Ulalek Fused Atrocity. This is a 2/5 legendary Eldrazi with Devoid, so it technically has no color. But its casting cost is 5 mana Wooburg, but each of those mana pips is a hybrid with 2 colorless, which means you could play this in an all-colorless deck and just spend 10 mana, or you could play it in a 5-color deck and spend 1 of each and only spend 5 mana, or any combination. And that just makes this kind of crazy as a commander, because the deck can go any way you want. I don't think we've ever gotten... Comment below and let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever gotten a commander that is 5-color that allows for the potential of 5-color without you actually having to go 5-color in order to play it. You can make any combination of colors your deck, and this will work. You could run a Sultai deck and not need access to the other 2 colors of mana at all for anything, and it would be legal. And that seems really cool to me and really interesting. But let's talk about what the abilities are. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay 2 colorless Hedron mana. If you do, you copy all spells you control, then copy all other activated and triggered abilities you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. This guy seems insane. So not only are you able to get double spells, and that's not just instants and sorceries, that's every spell, creatures, whatever you want, you get double when you cast an Eldrazi by paying an extra 2, but then you also copy all of the activated and triggered abilities? That seems crazy. Almost all of the Eldrazi have triggered abilities that trigger on cast. So being able to play something, get 2 of it, and then have each of those things trigger their abilities twice, essentially every Eldrazi you play with a cast trigger is going to get a ×4 to whatever ability they have that triggers on cast. And that's just scratching the surface, because we're not even talking about potential activated abilities as well. There's a new card in this set that can tap to make an Eldrazi 10/10, and that's an activated ability that can double when this is in play. So it just seems really, really crazy. It just seems like there's a lot of value here, but I think the part about it that I like the most is just that it can be up to a maximum of 5 colors. Your deck can be up to a maximum of 5 colors, but doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It's the one commander I can think of where you can run any color combinations you want and not have to include the other colors of mana and have it work and function as a commander deck, which is kind of exciting. So this one really, I'm close to pulling the trigger on. I kind of want it to mess around with, but I don't know if I'll quite go that far. I still think I like Omo a bit better, and if I buy anything, it's definitely only going to be one of these. I'm not going to splurge for two. But Ulalek is close, man. There's so many different interesting ways I think you could build around this that it could get kind of crazy. But that's the last of our spoilers for now. Those are the 4 commanders for the commander decks. But like I said, we have an entire mega leak of a ton of cards. I want to say there's like 40 plus cards that I have to talk about. We're going to break down that video into 2 videos. I'm going to do 2 videos just so I can get stuff out to you guys quicker. So the first one I'm going to get started on right away as soon as I post this. So keep your eyes out for that. And also, if you haven't yet, please like this video, like I said, so we can help it get out to many more people. It's you guys liking the video that's really helping the channel grow so fast. So please do that. And subscribe if you're new so you don't miss any of the crazy shenanigans that are on the way. But with that out of the way, thanks for hanging. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck text, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.